Which political party is telling citizens to fight National Guardsmen in the streets? Which political party is making threats and having fantasy texts over killing members of the GOP, including their children and family members? Which political party is the ideology of many of our mass shootings and even a political assassination this month alone? Who is responsible for all of this? Who is the dangerous party?
Warning, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
From government shutdown to governors refusing to allow President Trump to come into their cities and help them get their crime and the deportation under control. In fact, governors encouraging their citizens to fight ICE in the streets. Political chaos, political mayhem, and even political assassinations. And it's coming from one side. Have you ever considered how bad it would have been if Kamala had actually won the election? Tim Walz would have been the vice president. Tim Walz, the governor of the failed state of Minnesota, a state which is still under riotous control in the city of Minneapolis. Minnesota, which is almost last in education, a state which is going bankrupt, a state which has allowed radical socialists to take over their largest city. New York City, pay attention. Hi, I'm Pastor Marty. Welcome to the Afternoon Drive. Please make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. Once you are, smack the bell, click the word all. That will give you notification of my rants, my ravings, my undeniably flawless reasonings. Please like and share this video. It's the only way that we can get the word out that we're here. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being a part of the Afternoon Drive. I'm going to put a link in the comment section below. Make sure that you look up on YouTube a fantastic documentary called A Precarious State, Minnesota After COVID-19. It is an absolute 1-hour indictment of what democratic socialism does to a city, Minneapolis, and to an entire state, Minnesota. Tim Walz, the governor of the failed state, has been referred to as a coach. No, he wasn't a coach. He picked up jock straps off the locker room floor. He's been referred to as a military hero, and we found out, no, when he was about to be deployed, he opted for early retirement. He was supposedly at the Tiananmen Square uprising. He was nowhere there. In fact, his local hometown newspaper reported at the time he was safe at home and waiting until the unrest settled down to make his visit to China. He is a liar on top of a liar. We even watched him try to go, duck hunting, goose hunting, and he couldn't even load his own shotgun. He is a fraud with a capital F, and his wife to absolutely say things like, "It is the smell of freedom as I smell burning tires in Minneapolis" during the George Floyd riots. People's businesses, their livelihoods, their life savings going up in flames. Retailers like Nike and other major retailers pulling out of the city because nothing is being done over the gang shoplifting raids that happen continually even to this day. It is an unsafe city. It is a failing state. I'm going to break down that documentary for you. But I want you to see how this encapsulates, it is a snapshot of what America could have looked like had Kamala won, and what American cities and states are going to look like as democratic socialists take control.
It's kind of like a perfect storm.
Jim Freitag is an executive with CBRE, a global commercial real estate and investment firm. He's a go-to for major corporations here trying to sell off buildings they no longer need. Data analysis reveals nearly half, 49.7% of the building loans in MSP are in distress, meaning behind on payments, requiring new financing. Several investors here have backed out of the cities at substantial losses, including the stunning exit of the Ameriprise building. It sold last about 10 years ago for $200 million. It sold earlier this year for a little over $6 million. Dr. Carol Becker is editor of the Minneapolis Times. She worked for Democratic Mayor Sharon Sales Belton, spent 16 years on the Board of Estimate and Taxation. She's also a college professor. Becker cites a litany of city council proposals she considers hostile to business and growth.
We have this proposal for a labor standards board that will dictate how businesses run in Minneapolis. We have a vote to close I-94 between downtown Minneapolis and downtown St. Paul because somehow we don't need to go to the suburbs anymore. And we have a vote to close the garbage burner because we're going to become zero garbage, zero waste in a year. We are 128th out of 128 Midwest cities in new housing starts. People are not coming here. And so you have to start stepping back and saying, what is it that's driving this? Who are the people leading our city? And what are they implementing that is keeping these people from investing in the city?
I agree. Businesses here are struggling.
Council Vice President and Budget Chair Aisha Chugtai oversees nearly $2 billion of your taxpayer money. She says her constituents don't share the same concerns that business has.
And just hearing them talk about like the challenges with the retention of businesses and all the things that we can actually do to stimulate economic development, we're not interested in that.
Remember where we started this story? In Uptown, where Jim Rubin showed us all the boarded-up buildings and empty streets? This is Chugtai's ward. Here's what she sees.
I think Uptown has always been and always will be the comeback queen. And she's in the middle of a comeback right now.
She envisions a comeback no longer intended to attract outsiders to the area.
It was built for people who live in the suburbs and choose to visit Minneapolis. And I think that when we build a major economic hub around people who don't actually go here, then it is at the whims of whether they feel like coming here or not.
One of the things that I guess younger or far left people do not examine is the role of business in the prosperity of a region and the availability of jobs and the trajectory of the community. And so business has become sort of an enemy.
And you start to get to this question of these extremists bringing in policies that are anti-job, anti-wealth building, against small business, making it hard to get around the city.
Where does this go?
Number one, we have to decide whether or not moderates are going to come back into the discussion space.
Chugtai and Chavez are both members of the Democratic Socialists of America, or DSA. There are two others as well. Oren Chowdhury, who no longer makes reference to the DSA endorsement she promoted last election, and Robin Wansley, who's an avowed Marxist.
This is why I'm a Marxist. This is why I'm a socialist. Like, it's about having opportunity for working class people, convening opportunities for working class people to flex their power.
Robin Wansley isn't just the leader, she is the one that is introducing the most legislation and the most influential. She's the one that everybody votes with the most, and she does not believe in capitalism. She does not believe in private ownership of property. She wants the government to own it all. That's how extreme we are talking about for our city council.
Wansley led the campaign to stop the reopening of the 3rd precinct.
Are you not paying attention to what is happening in Atlanta around Cop City? That's what you want right now? And all the inhumane you've done to working class people in this city, you really want to try that? People literally call their bluff, like, try us.
As Democrats still try to paint themselves as innocent and being lied about from the Trump administration, that they're not trying to keep the government shut down because they're trying to fund health care for illegal immigrants. That's not what's happening. Oh, really? Remember now, this is the party that opened the gates wide and let 11 million people come in during the Biden administration. What, you weren't going to take care of them? This is the administration that is paying sanctuary cities to house them in 5-star hotels, trash them, destroy them, give them debit cards, give them health care. Baby Back Pritzker suing the president, suing the federal government over National Guard troops coming in to get things in the civil unrest of Chicago under control, saying ICE is only supposed to be deporting the worst of the worst. Now they're doing house-to-house raids. Why is that, Governor? Is that because you've instructed your law enforcement agents not to cooperate with ICE? That when you arrest one of these gang-banging, drug-trafficking vermin scum that's even responsible for murder, you literally turn them back loose on the streets, so now you have forced ICE to go door to door. We have watched the Democrats defend the Maryland man. He's just an entrepreneur who wants to stay in America. Entrepreneur, is that your new word for gangbanging drug dealer, human trafficker? So when they try to tell us, we're not trying to fund health care for illegal immigrants, do you really think we believe you? You have a leftist, Marxist agenda. And even the sane mainstream Democrats go along with this because Chuck E. Cheese Schumer has allowed his party to be hijacked by AOC. And that's what's driving this. And this ideology is being created, fostered in classrooms across blue state America. It is the classroom. Look, you can hire, or you can put in place even a conservative school board, and most school districts, even in red states, don't have those. But at the end of the day, the teachers that have been indoctrinated in rampant communism, social democratic liberalism, are in the classrooms, and they're programming your children. Minnesota went from first in the nation to nearly dead last in the nation.
Before the first bell rings, before fingers tap the iPads, some kids are already behind.
I'm Nina Bupasaban. Minnesota schools were once a source of pride, respected nationwide for performance. Now, more than half of our students can't read or do math at grade level. Billions are being spent, laws are being passed, but inside Minnesota classrooms, something still isn't working.
Teachers say they just don't have enough time to adequately teach the basics anymore. Minnesota began mandating something called social emotional learning, or SEL, 10 years ago. Teachers tell us SEL and other non-academic requirements can sometimes cut science, math, and history to as little as 3 hours a day.
Reading, math, science, on top of now a social emotional curriculum, it can be very challenging to get that in.
SEL teaches the kinds of things parents might commonly teach, such as how to deal with bullying. But some of the SEL teaching now crosses over into political advocacy. This is an excerpt from an SEL class Minnesota approved through this past spring. It's part of a curriculum for 5- and 6-year-olds called Woke Kindergarten. Notice the portrayal of police and pictures associated with the Minneapolis PD.
Who keeps us safe? We keep us safe. We feed us. We house us. We don't police us.
You know, it's easy to blame schools for the falling test scores, but there's something larger than that.
Tom Bach was a dynamic presence at the state legislature from the mid-1990s until he retired a couple years ago.
I asked my son, does he ever get letter grades? No letter grades. They just get a pass or fail. At what point do you start rewarding performance, or is just doing okay good enough?
More than a decade ago, educators began objecting to the use of standardized tests as a measure of learning. Minnesota made it optional. Now there's confusion over what should be taught.
They're not public schools, they are indoctrination centers. And they are indoctrinating young people into not reading, writing, and arithmetic, but their version of right and wrong. And it's twisted and it's backwards. Once again, the Bible proves itself to be true yet again. The Word of God declares that in the last days, men will declare that which is evil good, and that which is good evil. Are we not seeing that? Is that not being played out for us? And then we wonder why we have the criminal crime problem we have.
In 2019, then police chief Madera Arredondo told City Council Minneapolis would need 1,200 officers by 2025. 1,200. Instead, the Minneapolis Police Department today has little more than 600 officers.
The situation we're in today is not sustainable, in terms of manpower and resources.
It's no secret what caused the shortage. 2020, the city burning, crime skyrocketing.
The month of June 2020 had almost as many shooting victims in 1 month as what had been normal for the city in about a half a year.
Hundreds of officers resigned in the midst of the city's darkest time.
They've had elected officials and other people tell them that they're all racists and they're all killers, but they've been extremely hurt. It has an effect.
Chief Brian O'Hara says the MPD lost 40% of its department then, 50% of its investigators, many of whom were among the most experienced leaders on the team. Nothing drives home the dire consequences of that staffing shortage more than the tragic case of Officer Jamal Mitchell last year.
Squad 512, look, we have at least 2 victims outside at the location bleeding.
Responding on the scene of a shooting alone.
Hey, are we up? Hey!
Without a partner.
Who shot you? Who shot you? Are there victims inside?
Officer Mitchell approached what appeared to be an injured person, but the perpetrator pulled out a gun and shot him. Since 2019, the city has seen a 43% jump in homicides, a more than 67% surge in motor vehicle theft, and a 73% increase in vandalism. Add to that the recent shooting at the Annunciation Church that left 2 children dead and 21 injured, launching Minneapolis once again to the top of national news.
Authorities say a heavily armed suspect targeting the students, firing from outside.
Even Democrats within the city of Minneapolis, who were sympathetic, obviously, to the George Floyd situation, have said, whoa, we went way too far with this whole defund the police thing. You think?
They had a right to protest. What they did then is they lost the moment and went from a righteous indignation to an extremist kind of position that saw policing as unnecessary.
But instead of focusing on fixing policing, the city council chose to funnel $2.5 million for violence interrupters, unarmed citizens who fight crime through conflict mediation.
We advocated for the creation of more unarmed safety personnel to tend to, again, all these other crises.
And we ended up with naive governance. They have sold out on this whole issue of lack of necessity of police and the fact that communities can police themselves. Do you believe that? No, absolutely not.
Samuel says the decision was a dangerous one.
They put everybody at risk. People are going to get killed. I assure you, if this regular citizens continues to intervene in crimes, somebody will get killed.
And that's not the only decision the city council's made that has many other leaders here in the city's concerned. It was cleanup day at this homeless encampment in South Minneapolis last month. It took 2.5 hours for the city to shovel out the accumulation of garbage that had piled up: rotting food, used drug needles, condoms, human waste, all posing dangerous health and safety conditions right next to a school for kids from preschool to 11th grade. Despite concerns that these encampments attract drug dealers and addicts and put the community at risk, City Councilman Jason Chavez is among those who approved paying $280,000 to people living in homeless encampments to clean up their own trash.
The priority should always be not lawsuits, but rather housing for people and using city resources to make sure that people can have a place to sleep at night.
Minneapolis police officers responded to multiple reports of shots being fired.
And despite the effort to make this encampment safer, just a few weeks later, a mass shooting at the same encampment and another shooting nearby left 12 people injured, 4 with life-threatening gunshot wounds.
She was shot in the head.
The encampment was immediately closed down, but there are many more.
How does this happen? How do these socialists get control of a city, get control of a state, trying to get their hands on our nation? How does that happen? We'll take a look at AOC. AOC grew up in a upper middle class suburb. Beautiful town, beautiful homes, housing values in the millions of dollars, manicured lawns, etc., etc., etc. But she goes into the Bronx, gets an apartment in a small district, like 10,000 people in that voting district, and gets herself elected congressperson from a small district. But it gives her a big platform. The same thing for crotch-rot Jasmine Crotchet, the wannabe gangsta ghetto ho mama. She grew up richer than AOC. Went to private schools costing upwards of $40,000 for high school, not to mention college. And when you catch her off camera, she actually talks like a human being. But for the cameras, she plays up this whole, I'm a boss lady. Ain't gonna talk to me like that, Governor Hot Wheel. Again, small little district. She gets herself elected. And that's what they do. They're like vermin. It's like letting one cockroach in, they just multiply. That's how they do it. And it's how they've done it in Minneapolis.
So we brought in a mathematician to analyze how every member voted on every issue last year. And what we found is startling. Take a look at the numbers. It takes 7 out of 13 votes to pass a resolution by majority. Last year, mainstream Democrats, the DFL, aligned with the socialist DSA as a majority 85% of the time or more. A supermajority, which overrides mayoral vetoes, requires 9 out of 13 votes. Mainstream Democrats aligned with socialists 69% of the time or more. And get this, the council president, Elliott Payne, who ran as a mainstream Democrat, voted with the socialists 93 to 98% of the time.
But that's amazing. That's a powerful visual of, is that one party? Is that two parties? What is their true affiliation? Or are they saying what they need to say to get in the door, and maybe there's a different agenda?
Stuart Ackerberg is a lifelong Democrat from a second-generation family that's been doing business in Uptown more than 60 years.
The council member that controls the core of the commercial space in Uptown, the 10th Ward, in my opinion, has not been really pro-business, has not been pro-safety and security.
Have you ever read the DSA platform?
I have. It's frightening. Frightening. I think everyone should read it because it is astounding. I was shocked and saddened and a little afraid when I read it.
Now, this is what Ackerberg is talking about, the DSA platform. That's their goals and objectives. They want to free all incarcerated people. They want to close local jails, disarm and defund the police. They want to abolish prisons, end all misdemeanor offenses, and cut funding for prosecutors. And then they would like social ownership of all major industry and infrastructure.
We're back to communism, where government owns the whole economy, that there is no capitalism, and there's no private ownership of businesses.
How did this happen?
I was an elected official in 2017 when we first saw social media being this new organizing tool, and they used it to overthrow the moderates on the city council.
According to Becker, the DSA brought less radical groups into its fold by sounding more moderate until after the election.
and then comes in with this much, much more radical agenda. It isn't, we're going to represent the people who are here. It was, we're going to rebuild the city in our image.
Part of why I think the DSA has been successful is that we're looking at elections taking place on off years.
Political scientist Dr. David Schultz says it's no coincidence this group is ramping up for election in 2025. It's an off-year election with traditionally very low turnout. Also unusual, this election year, everybody on the city council is up for re-election. The DSA has endorsed a 5th candidate for city council, a candidate for mayor, and 2 more for Parks and Recreation.
Activists, this is their only game in town. And they're motivated, they show up, and what? In an electoral democracy, those who show up get to move the political agenda.
There are lots and lots of people who have been voting Democrat their whole lives. They don't understand that they're voting for a socialist instead of what had been the Democratic agenda.
You gotta love this, don't you?
There are lots and lots of people who have been voting Democrat their whole lives. They don't understand that they're voting for a socialist instead of what had been the Democratic agenda.
Your party, endorsed these people, breathed life into their movement, gave them a platform, and now you're stunned that they've hijacked and taken over your party. You and the Nancy Pelosi's thought you could control them. Business as usual, good old politics, you would keep them in line. And I'm telling you, Skeletor, i.e. Nancy Botox Pelosi, i.e. Cruella Demented, AOC is done with you. She's done with Chuck Schumer. And to this Democratic woman here in Minneapolis, these socialists are not listening to you. They're not going to listen to you. But yet you have programmed an entire city to be Democrat and just go into a voting booth and just blindly vote for anybody that's got a D by their name. You created this mess. You clean it up. Because the Democrats that are wising up and looking at what's happening, they're coming to our side because they get it.